I'm back. Parts are in for this engine, so I just put the push rods in, put the rocker shaft back on, and torqued up the bolts and set the overhead. I had to modify this valve a little bit. The new button that I got didn't want to fit on there because it was burred from the other one damaging it. Trying to make this work without taking the whole engine apart. So I cleaned up those burrs, got it to spin nice and free and easy on there. I think that's going to be good enough. This push rod also does not turn real smooth in the lifter at the bottom. That lifter is damaged as well from that push rod getting smashed inside there. But it seems like it sits in the cup like it should, so I think it's going to be okay. But again, this entire engine has to be taken out of here and completely disassembled to get the lifters out. So we're trying to get away from doing that right now. Went through and reset all the valves, and yeah, like they all needed between 1/2 to 3/4 of a turn of adjustment on the adjusters, which is a lot. It usually is like a max of a 1/4 turn. So these things were way out of whack. So now I got to finish cleaning this all up here, and I'll throw some compression adapters in, and I'm going to recheck my compression pressures and see what compression is now with the valve set, and also check compression on number 1, which I can now do because there's push rods to actually operate the valves. Okay, got my compression gauge all set up here, number 5 hole. So the only thing that's changed on number 5 is that we set the valves. So I think we'll crank it over and see what compression is now. That was what, 360 or 365 or something last time. So let's see what it goes to now. Well, that's definitely higher than last time. We are just under 400 PSI. So that went from 360 to 400. Yeah, I just double checked. Number 5 was 360 last time. So just setting the valves brought the compression pressure up from 360 to 400 PSI, which absolutely proves that we had a valve problem. They were way too loose. So now we're set up in number 4 hole, and let's see what number 4 does. Are we going to see a massive increase here too? Only thing that's changed is I set the valves. Stop climbing there. Just over, I guess 380, so that's 385. I think that's what it was last time. Yep, 385 last time, stayed at 385, so that didn't change much. Now we're in the number 3 hole. Let's check that one. Let's see what we get here. Yeah, what is that? 380. I think that went down 5 PSI. Yeah, it went from 385 down to 380. So this time we're on the number 2 hole. Let's see what we get there. That one looks good. I'm going to call that 385, 390. I'm going to call it 390. So that one went up 5 PSI. All right, now we're in the number 1 hole. This is the one I've all been waiting for. So before, it was different pressure every time I compression tested it. And sometimes it was 20, sometimes it was 210. 210 was the highest, 0 was the lowest. Sometimes it was 108, or 110, whatever. It just is all over the place. So now that we got push rods in it to operate the valves, let's see what it'll make now. This is the one that's going to determine if this engine actually is going to go back together the way it is, or if we're going to have to still tear it down or not. Okay, here we go. Oh, it's looking good. Wow. That's one of our strongest cylinders. 395. Okay, so there we have our test results. So I corrected my factory PSI and minimum PSI because there are 2 different engines for this tractor, and they're very, very similar. The specs are very similar, but they're not exactly the same. So For this specific engine, factory spec is 522, the minimum is 370. So here's where we're at now. Before we had 210, 285, 385, 385, and 360. That number 5 at 360, now with the valve set, came up to 400. So that was completely a valve issue on that one. So we got that solved. Now we're 395, 390, 380, 385, and 400. So that's within our 10%. So we're within spec all the way around here. The compression is not as high as I'd like to see it, but I'm surprised they want it at 522. That seems pretty high to me, so I'm not sure what's up with that. To me, 350 PSI and up on a diesel is usually kind of where you want to be, so I kind of feel like this one is really good. I'm very happy with this. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't run. So the only thing that concerns me is that it did have a lot of blow-by coming out of there. Maybe that has something to do with that number 1 cylinder not having any push rod action. I'm not sure, but at this point we're gonna put this tractor back together and I'm gonna run it and see how it operates. But I'll bet it's gonna have twice as much power now, and it's gonna run a lot nicer too. And I'm not gonna bother doing a leak down test because I did that already and all the cylinders tested really good. So if the leak down tests good and the compression is within spec, we're not gonna learn too much else here on that. So I'm not gonna waste my time with it. If a guy wanted to be super thorough, you could do that, but I don't think I'm gonna gain any information that I need. So we're just going to put it back together now. And I did talk to the customer about that, and that was the decision we agreed on. If we replace those 2 push rods and it runs good and has if it has proper compression on that number 1 cylinder, once those push rods are replaced, then we're just going to put it together and run it the way it is, because this tractor only has a couple of hours on it. That tach is showing 1945 hours, and that's supposed to be what's actually on it. It's supposed to be a real low-hour tractor, and when I look at certain parts of it, I definitely believe that. But when I look at the tires, like those tires do not look to me like 1900 hours, especially the front ones. Now I know this thing gets run down the highway quite a bit, and that does wear those lugs off pretty fast, but this just does not look like, I don't know. If it's rolled over 10,000 hours, and so then this has 11,900 and whatever hours, then it's in remarkable shape for a tractor with that many hours. So I don't know what to think about this one. I'd like to just plug in and check the computer on here and see what the computer says it actually has. But this engine is mechanically injected, so it does not have an ECU that keeps track of that. Best we got is that instrument cluster. And I don't think I can plug into this tractor and go into those instruments. I don't think so. I can check on that a little later. Right now I want to get it running again, but maybe that dash got changed at 6,000 hours or something, you know? I'm not sure. This valve cover was really oily on top when I took it off, so I ordered the new seals for here. And I did not order a new gasket because it's rubber and I was going to reuse it. But I was cleaning this thing up all nice to put it back on, and I'm looking at this thing. That valve cover is cracked. It's cracked all the way along here, from about somewhere about there all the way down into that bolt hole, and maybe even there too. This thing is cracked, so that's why it was all oily on top. So I checked on availability. They're $537 for that cast aluminum thing, but they don't have any stock. It's got to come from Japan, so I'm waiting for a call back on exactly how long that's going to take. The problem is it's cracked right through these bosses, so if we get this welded, we're going to have to do a bunch of grinding and stuff to make this actually work properly. So I'm not sure what's going to be the best route to go there, but my experience is stuff that comes from Japan is going to be a while. I wish I had caught this earlier, but I didn't see this until I was cleaning this up. Well, that sounds completely different than it did. Quite a bit of blue smoke. Probably coming from that number 1 cylinder that's all full of diesel fuel. I'm sure that'll go away once it warms up. Sounds really nice now. Kind of hard to tell with the sunlight now, but no more smoke. Sounds good. Okay guys, I don't even know where I left off with my videotaping on this tractor. It's been a little while. I've been working on a lot of different stuff, and I kind of got sick of dealing with the camera and taping stuff. And I always regret that later when that happens, but facts are facts. That's the way it is. So I apologize. I missed a lot of stuff here. I got this engine back together, and it ran really nice, and got everything together, took it out on the road, and I got this screeching, squealing sound. And so I came back, and I thought, oh, these fan belts are loose, I guess. So I tightened up those fan belts and took it for a drive, and that didn't change anything. They were a bit loose, but they weren't too bad, so that didn't change anything. And so then I got checking around a bunch of stuff, and I realized that the turbo was shot, and that will be exactly from the running that oil so full of diesel fuel that journal bearing just couldn't get enough lube. So I put a new turbo on it. You could see where the vanes were rubbing the compressor, and the shaft was like falling out of there almost. So that solved that problem. That was a lot better, but I could still, in certain load conditions, I could still hear a squealing sound. And I thought there's got to be a boost leak somewhere. So I started checking all my connections and everything. I had one of my boys in the cab, and then I was soaping down the intake manifold joins there where it bolts to the head, soaking it down with soap water, and these last two were just bubbling like crazy. There was blowing big bubbles. And so then I ordered new intake gaskets, and then I found that to get the intake gasket, to get the intake off, all the stuff that I had off of here before pretty much all has to come off again. You got to get that frame out of the way, because it comes back and covers the back part of that frame, covers this end of the intake manifold, so that has to all get undone and shoved out of the way, and lines and stuff and all that. And then I realized that you still can't take that manifold off because it's studded, and there's no way that you can get in there and get the studs out. Like, there's just not enough. Well, I can't even put the camera in there. There's just no room. All the bolts are up here in behind. There's no room that you can get in there and take those studs out. The only way you can get that intake manifold actually off of there is to take the injection pump off. So it's a huge job. I don't know what kind of recycled Japanese cardboard these intake gaskets are made out of, but it is not very good material. It's brittle. It just breaks like nothing. And this is the gasket that was leaking, and you can see how it's misshaped. I am pretty sure this was not put together right at the factory, and this has probably been leaking for the entirety of this tractor's existence. So I put new gaskets in, made sure they were sitting all nice, and then got that manifold sitting good. I glued it on both sides with right stuff, so it should never ever be able to blow out again. But you can see how it's just cracked in a bunch of places. Like, it's just a very poor material. Yeah, not a big Kubota guy at this point. I never was a real big green guy. Like, I worked for John Deere for almost 10 years, but I never really was a guy that bleeds green. But I'll tell you what, working on this Kubota, it sure has not swayed me to be an orange tractor guy, I'll tell you that. Anyhow, at this point, everything's done. It's back together. I took it on the road and I road tested it, and it runs really nice. I got no more screeching sound. The boost leaks are all fixed. So now this tractor is finally finished and ready to go home.